It is an honor and a pleasure to welcome Judy Maltz in conversation at this really critical and challenging time for the state of Israel, the people of Israel, and Jewish people everywhere. We're speaking this morning with Judy Maltz, who covers the Jewish world and writes features about Israeli society for Haaretz's English edition. She began her career at Haaretz 30 years ago as an economic reporter, and she was among the founding editors of the English language print edition. And I know so many of us are grateful for our English language edition on our phones, and we especially now, it really is a lifeline to understand not only what's going on in Israel, but to give a broader perspective. So first and foremost, all things being equal, how are you doing? You've lived in Israel. I can imagine you have family and friends there. We hope and pray that everyone's okay.
Thank you very much. I happen to be in New York right now. I've been reassigned here. I came in August, so I actually haven't been in Israel since then. I do have children there, though. I have a son who is on reserve duty there, so I probably don't sleep well at night like most Israeli parents at this time. Another personal anecdote, my older daughter spent a year on Kibbutz Be'eri a few years ago working in the children's house there. So she's very distraught, as we all are. This is a beautiful kibbutz. I've visited many times. Vivian Silver was a friend of mine. She's now hostage in Gaza. She's a very, very well-known Canadian-Israeli peace activist. So, every story is heartbreaking, but especially when you have this personal connection, it's devastating.
We're so sorry. God willing, those who remain in danger or who are under threat will come home safe and sound, God willing. And again, you just mentioned something that I think is really important. That is so painfully ironic, if not galling, that some of the very people who put themselves out on the line, even amongst other Israelis, to continue to engage with Palestinians over peace. Some of those were the first to die and the first to be taken hostage. There just is such a kind of a horrific, painful irony about that.
Yeah, and you know what? Just like I mentioned, I visited Be'eri quite a few times over the years. I know people at that kibbutz, and it's a place I really love. And I was there a couple of years ago before one of the rounds of elections. We've had 5 in recent years. So I went back to look at what I had written then, because it was always interesting to hear what people on the kibbutzim were saying and what their dilemmas were in terms of voting. And back then, it's frightening to read it today. They were saying that the government prefers Hamas to us. We need to get rid of this threat on the border. It's going to blow up at some point. It was so prophetic, and it's chilling actually to read that now. And they said, our government is more interested in propping up Hamas and really doesn't care about us. And this was years before what we're now learning, that a lot of the guns that the security people had down there were taken from them for whatever crazy reason and moved to other places. As we all know now, unfortunately, there were not a lot of soldiers on the border that morning. They also were moved to other places. So if only the government had listened a few years ago. The writing was on the wall. You just had to be looking for it, I guess.
Whether it's complacency or what the Israelis call conceptia, kind of just a very false sense of where the priorities and where the resources should be extended. That's for many inquiries, I'm sure, after hostilities have, God willing, calmed down a little bit. Your current beat, though, is world Jewry, but in particular, the pieces you've been writing of late have focused on what's going on in the United States.
Right.
And really the precipitous, I guess, unsurprising, but maybe excessively shocking rise in anti-Semitism, particularly on college campuses. Can you talk a little bit? I mean, you've written so many different articles about so many different institutions, but just in the aggregate, what's your sense as to kind of the current state of institutionalized or backed anti-Semitism here, and the current feeling amongst that you sense amongst American Jews?
Look, what's going on now on the campuses, from what I see, from what I know, from what I hear, is unprecedented. I'm a graduate of Barnard College, so it's been very interesting. I graduated many years ago, but it's been very interesting to go back there now, and I've visited quite a few times. And I don't recognize the campus. I mean, this was such a Jewish school when I went there, and I think it still is. I mean, in terms of the percentage of Jewish students, it's still very much up there. But I went to the protest that took place a few days after October 7th. And it was really, I can imagine, it's very, very frightening, I think, to be a Jewish student on campuses these days. Now, I know that in recent years, we've heard a lot about BDS and how threatening it is to Jewish students. But my sense was that it was always a bit overblown, because Jewish students that I spoke to never really talked about it. And I think many didn't even know what BDS was. In fact, there was a survey a few months ago that the World Jewish Congress did, asking students. Now they didn't really highlight this finding. You had to go dig deep into the survey, but a large percentage of Jewish students have no idea what BDS is, if you ask them. So clearly they did not find it a threat. Today, however, you walk around on these campuses. I was at Columbia, I was in Washington Square Park, and I see it in video clips on other campuses as well. It's kind of frightening. From the river to the sea, most Jews take that as a call to destroy Israel. And even today, most Jews still do identify with Israel. The mask, the keffiyehs wrapped around the heads, it's not a comfortable situation. Now, how to explain what's going on? Why have certain administrators been not as forceful in their responses as they should be? It's very hard for me to understand. The only thing I can think of is when you look and you go and you see these protests, there are just so many students on the pro-Palestinian side, that maybe they are just afraid to come out against them. They don't want any revolt on campus. Otherwise, I don't really understand what they're afraid of.
And it seems also that on the other side, pressuring them, I think justifiably, for not responding to such clear expressions of anti-Semitism and such clear equivocation on calling out the Hamas massacre, are so many Jewish donors of those organizations that are deciding to express themselves through withholding support. And so in many ways, those administrators, this is really a call for character and courage on their part to live by their principles rather than being pilloried from one side to the other. I'm hoping those principles are the principles that are the foundations of those institutions of liberal democracy and inquiry and rejection against unmitigated evil. But the politics and the trends seem to be really speaking more loudly than the principles upon which many of those institutions are founded.
Well, yeah, interestingly, yesterday, by coincidence or not, both Columbia and the University of Pennsylvania announced that they were forming these special task forces. Now, I definitely think it's related to all the pressure that's been put on them by alumni, by the students. It seems that also, in the media, there's been a lot of stories on CNN, MSNBC, certainly Fox, about all the anti-Semitism on campuses, and it really looks bad. Colombia, even a few weeks ago, had to postpone indefinitely their big fundraiser because they knew there was not going to be a big response now, especially from Jewish donors and Jewish alumni. So I'm pretty sure it's connected.
Oh, absolutely. So more broadly, ma nishtana hamatzav hazeh. Why is this situation different than the ones that came before when Israel had to go in and do what it did in Gaza, mowing the grass, that kind of really not great euphemism, whether it was 2021 or the years before that. Why has this been, why is this different? Why has the response to this been different in your estimation?
Well, first of all, because what happened is totally different. I mean, I don't think anyone will argue with the fact that this was started by a mass killing spree by Hamas in the southern border communities of Israel. An awful, I mean, it's the worst pogrom since the Holocaust against Jewish people, what happened to, and I think that really, really shocked not only Israelis, but Jews around the world. And it, definitely triggered lots of thoughts about the Holocaust. These atrocities, nothing like this ever happened in Israel before. It made Israelis feel very unsafe. It made Jews abroad feel very unsafe because I guess for most Jews in the diaspora, there's always the idea if things get really bad, we can always run to Israel. There we have an army and a sovereign state. And now people are thinking, well, actually, those people in the kibbutzim, they waited for hours locked up in closets and in safe rooms before anyone came to help them. And that's a very, very scary thought. This idea that we might not have a place to run to if we need to. So that's what prefaced all of this. And we were just talking about the protests on campus. Those protests started before Israel really went in and started to retaliate. And that's what's the whole strange thing. I could see those students at Columbia wondering, well, we're trying to hold a vigil here to commemorate our people who have been killed and have been taken hostage. So why are those people on the other lawn right across from us celebrating? What are they celebrating exactly? What do they want exactly? So it's shaken up everybody. I mean, I don't think there's a Jewish person in the world today who still holds the same views they held on October 6th. This has unleashed something also in the left or the far left that, I think for a lot of people, a lot of liberal Jews, and especially liberal Israelis, what happened has been devastating on three levels. First of all, just the atrocities, the nightmare of what happened. And I think it only gets worse from day to day as more of these stories come out and we learn more details. But for many Israelis, there's also this rage against the government, which let it happen because the writing was on the wall, because our government and our prime minister were warned that Israel's enemies were watching, and they were just waiting for the right moment. They saw how he was dividing the country. They were watching the protest movements, and the prime minister was warned by the heads of the army and the security services that this is a big problem, this judicial overhaul, and maybe he should put it aside for the sake of unity because it's affecting solidarity in the country. And he didn't. So there's this rage, especially the people down south who are not his voters. By the way, our prime minister has refused to mutter the word kibbutzim. And it's not a coincidence. The kibbutzim do not vote for him. And then there is this sense of betrayal that many liberal Jews feel by the left. Many who say, we always thought other minorities were our allies in the social justice movements. Why are they not taking our side? Why are they not mentioning what happened to innocent Jewish people who were living on the border on the morning of October 7th. So all these things together, I think, are unprecedented and causing a lot of despair for many Jews and Israelis.
Listen, you're pouring my heart out. You're pouring most of the people that I talk to their hearts out as well. Again, what seems so counterintuitive, and you mentioned this, is that you would think that in response to or in recognition of the unprecedented brutality of October 7th, that might tamp down pro-Palestinian or pro-Hamas rallies, but it seemed to do the opposite. It's almost like they were protesting too much. It's almost like, as you were saying, before Israel even responded, there were already rallies as if, as if Israel had already been in Gaza for a week. It just seems mystifying to me that rather than evoking a sense of some degree of empathy, at least in the first days, in the first weeks, if anything, the victimization of Jews supercharged those who are looking for a reason to protest and indict Israel and challenge its very existence. Mm-hmm. And do you have a sense, and again, I almost hesitate to say this because I feel like I sound like my grandfather talking about the fact that under the thin veneer of civilized life, there is always anti-Semitism there. But I think a lot of us, as you're saying, on the left, but I think across the board, are shocked that with all the other moral trajectories of embrace of diversity and inclusion and support for the most marginalized, whether it's Muslims or people in communities of color or LGBTQIA, etc., we seem to have been left out of that equation. And if anything, a lot of, especially young people, we all seem to be shocked by what appears to be a latent level of anti-Semitism that now, because it's Israel and not an attack on Jews like Tree of Life, has given a license to be so archly critical and extreme and harsh without feeling like you can be accused of anti-Semitism. Mm-hmm. Do you feel some of that in? And I know that's a long-winded way of sharing some of that, but I'm venting too. Sorry.
Yeah, so am I. Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out what happened because I haven't lived in the United States for many years. Really, I haven't lived here except for a very short period. I haven't lived here since I was a college student, and I'm trying to figure it out myself. And what seems to be part of the problem here, from what I'm beginning to learn, is what people are being taught in schools or how they are being taught to view the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. For many of us in Israel, the big argument was always about the 67 borders and giving back the occupied territories, the West Bank, and the whole dilemma about the settlements and should we evacuate them or should we build up the settlement project? No Israelis were talking about 48, giving everything back. When you come to these protests, these pro-Palestinian protests, it is very rare to see the word occupation. Everyone's talking about 48, from the river to the sea. And the whole, I think most Israelis do not know that the way it's being framed here in the United States, this whole settler colonization thing, and that Israelis are the colonizers, and this is resistance to colonization. That's not part of the discourse in Israel. That was a bit shocking for me. Coming here, I did not know that it had come to this. But this, in a way, explains there's the oppressors and the oppressed. all Israelis are oppressors, not just the settlers or not just those who support the settlers, but all Israelis are oppressors, and the oppressors, how they see it in their very simplistic terms, there's a need for resistance to the oppressors, and as you'll see, they say by any means. And that by any means was translated into what we saw on October 7th.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's really an incredible article in The Atlantic by Simon Sebag Montefiore. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to see it, where he
Yes.
really unpacks that. In many ways, what's happening now is really just a symptom and an outgrowth of the last 5 to 10 years of education and what's been going on in especially higher education and academia. And I think you're absolutely right with that
Little woke
kind of
culture.
that binary template
Yeah.
has kind of reconfigured everything, even just understanding right from wrong, being consistent in one's progressive values for everyone except the Jews in Israel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been really horrific. One of the things that I've been assuring our friends in Israel, particularly amongst the Jewish community, is the media tends to cover a bunch of JVP folks in Grand Central Station, or if not now at the Capitol or whatever. And I think it's really important that people in Israel understand that that's not the majority of American Jews.
Right.
That they get a lot of play online and in the media because it's so counterintuitive, but
They're
that
very
the vast
vocal.
majority, yes, the vast majority of American Jews, like the vast majority of Israelis at this point, are unified in what needs to, as difficult as it is, as
Mhm.
costly and as much sacrifice as it will require. We're all kind of lockstep behind what needs to happen in response to this kind of extreme situation.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. They do get a lot of coverage. I haven't yet seen, it would be interesting to see some sort of poll about attitudes among American Jews. But we were talking before about the campuses and what's new. What's new there, I think, is you're seeing an unusually large number of Jewish students who are coming out now to express solidarity with Israel. And I think, you know, a year ago, a few years ago, you would have never seen that. Um, I saw hundreds at Columbia at that first vigil I attended, and then even more at the next event I went to there. So it is bringing something out in the Jewish students.
No, absolutely. So listen, last question. Obviously, this will change Israel forever. And I think in many ways it will change for positive and negatively the relationship between the American Jewish community and Israel. Do you think this will change I mean, you've only been here a couple months, but you were born and raised here.
Yeah.
Do you think that this is going to profoundly change how Jews look at themselves in American society and in their relationship with those beyond the Jewish community?
I think it's pretty safe to say yes, based on what I'm seeing here. Um, I it feels to me that Jews are so scared now. Jews are even talking about which of my non-Jewish friends can I rely on if something really terrible happens here in America? Whose house could I go to hide? I mean, who would have thought a month ago that Jews would be thinking those kind of thoughts? But they are. I'm working on a story now about how this is affecting college choices of college-bound kids. Now, Jewish kids have always been known to strive to go to the Ivy Leagues and all the elite colleges. And many are reconsidering, do they really want to be at schools like that, where they're going to have to walk around with their heads down all the time? They're going to have to take off their yarmulke or their Jewish star necklaces. So I think we really haven't even begun to process the impact this is going to have on us, but nothing is going to be the same anymore, including how Jews feel in America. I mean, we're still in the middle of it, so it's hard to say, but it just looks like it's escalating from day to day. When I started trying to monitor what was going on in the campuses like a week or two ago. So there was like one incident a day, two. Now I am absolutely getting dizzy trying to keep on top of what's happening.
To be continued. Judy Maltz, thank you so much for your time this morning and for your really wonderful coverage that I think, I know for American Jews is incredibly informative and enlightening at a time in which we all are looking for reliable sources of information amongst the many out there that aren't. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I really appreciate it. And really,
Thanks.
may your family
I'm
be.
sorry I couldn't be more optimistic.
No, no, you know what? We're Jews. You know, we want to know where we stand and we can work from there. You know, that's
Yeah.
what happens.
I know you
Thank you
were
for.
one of the first synagogues to host the leaders of the protest movement, right?
Yes, yes, in Seattle here. Yeah, we had brothers in arms here
They've
when
been
a
doing an
lot of the Americans.
amazing, they've been doing amazing work in Israel now. I mean, if it weren't for them, this country would have completely collapsed at this point.
Oh, absolutely.
The government's not functioning. None of the state institutions are functioning. They've taken over. They've become like a pseudo state.
No, the grassroots, the people of Israel have really risen to the occasion far
That's
more than the
true.
government of Israel.
Oh yeah. Well, the
Absolutely.
government.
Well, I know. Don't even get me started. I know. I know. Listen, thank you so much
Thank,
for everything, and please, many prayers for you and your family in Israel that
thank
they,
you.
God
Thank
willing,
you.
should stay safe, and that everyone should come back alive and well. Please.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Take care.
Take care. Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.